Hey everyone, welcome to the KE Report and a company update from Snowline Gold, chatting with Scott Berdahl, CEO of Snowline. Company is traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol SGD and on the OTCQB under the symbol SNWGF. Scott and I are going to more or less do a Q1 recap of the news that's been released in the first 3 months of this year. That includes drill results, a lot from the Valley deposit, as well as other targets that were drilled, being the Jupiter target on the Einerson project. They had results from that target. Also, a $20 million bought deal financing from this first quarter. A lot for us to get to, and really just a big picture overview of this Yukon-focused gold explorer with already an over 7 million ounce resource, both indicated and inferred, at the Valley zone. So, Scott, let's just start off with a recap of the 2024 drill program. It's completed. All the results are out. Just remind everybody how much drilling you did and the overall goals. What was achieved through that drilling?
Sure. So yeah, we got a lot done. We drilled 35,000 meters in total, which was, a huge number for us. For context, all the drilling into Valley prior to that amounted to around just shy of 28,000 meters. And so of that 35,000 meters that we drilled across our whole portfolio, 25,000 was at Valley. And then the 10,000 was on additional targets. We tested several other intrusion-related gold systems on the Rogue project and one on the Cynthia project to the south, as well as drilling on two orogenic targets, Jupiter and Avalanche Creek up on the Einerson project. So we got a lot done. At Valley particularly, we really enhanced our understanding of that system. It was a mix of infill and step-out drilling. So yeah, we'll have an updated resource out in the coming month or so on that work and piecing together what that has told us definitively. So pretty excited to get that over the line. We've seen some decent grades in some of the step outs. We've seen really strong continuity in our infill and really good confirmation with some spectacular holes. So yeah, we're excited to get that over the line. And then on the regional targets, obviously we haven't had another sort of jaw-dropping discovery to the flavor of Valley, but we're seeing some really strong sniffs out there, and they're not always served up on a platter, just with high grades literally outcropping at surface like Valley is. So more work to do regionally, but we're still very excited by the regional potential around Valley, and that's something that we'll be continuing to explore.
So, Scott, the consistent aspect of the drilling at Valley has been long widths of good grade. The most recent news release, another example of that, of 617 meters at 1.7 grams per ton gold from surface. This also included over 3 grams per ton gold, over 202 meters. Look, over and over again, it seems like Valley has delivered in terms of the drill results. That's why you were able to come out with the initial resource of over 7 million ounces here. But what more drilling do you have to do at Valley to de-risk? And are there still expansion opportunities here, or is this really locking in however many ounces we will see in that updated resource?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of both. There's still open edges to the Valley system. But at some point, just given the top-heavy nature of the system, so those long, consistent intervals like the 617 meters at 1.7 that you mentioned, that sub-interval, as is characteristic of Valley, the highest grades are right near the surface. So that 3.2 grams over 200 meters, that actually one of the deeper high-grade intervals, it starts at 96 meters. But, with good mineralization above it as well, a lot of our, the best intervals we've had to date are starting right from surface, like the best parts of the best intervals. So all that to say that, we've defined a very robust system there. And so as we chase these edges, off to some of them dip and so on. So as we chase them off to depth and not at those bonanza grades or, just very nice high grades, as mentioned, it becomes a less high priority. We definitely want to show gold is there, but if it's mineralization that's going to enter a mine plan in, say, year 20 or year 30 or something, just way down the line, then it's less of a priority. Like, yes, we want to know that it's there, but we don't need to kind of fine tune it. But yeah, with the drilling that we've done, the infill drilling should upgrade a lot of what's there. And we'll see when we get the resource done and out, then that'll give a pretty clear picture of, okay, where do we need to continue to drill to bring things into measured and indicated. And I think that we'll have made a lot of progress there. Like even with our initial resource estimate, we're at 55% indicated. So that's a very good starting point. And of course, we just about doubled the total meters of drilling. since that time. So there are open edges to chase and possible infill. And on top of that, hole 115 from one of our recent releases was really surprising to us and, a great technical success. We drilled about 300 meters away from the current edge of the deposit within the valley intrusion and hit a nice broad zone. It was about 100 meters of around a half gram per ton with a highlight interval within it of, and I forget the exact numbers, but it was around 15 meters at 2 grams per ton. And so what was really interesting about that, beyond just the grades, was that it's right near a dike of this fine-grained porphyritic texture material, which is what we see right under the hotspot, the highest grade spot of the valley intrusion, basically our deposit. And so to see that out in another part of the intrusion, driving higher grade mineralization is pretty intriguing. There are a couple of potential explanations. One is, that there are sort of spokes of these dikes carrying pockets of high grade or even little trends of high grade throughout the broader intrusion. And that could be quite interesting just from a very long mine life standpoint. But the other possibility that raises is that you have other pockets of this high grade, of this very fertile fluid or magma phase in different parts of the intrusion that's driving other pockets of high grade mineralization. So that's definitely something that we'll be exploring for this year. You could almost call it like brownfields exploration, just in light of, what we already have at Valley, but stepping out and looking for other high grade pockets, as opposed to just chasing off the edges of the system, but hopefully, maybe tagging into something else within there. So that has us pretty excited as we look into 2025.
Okay, that's interesting because, yeah, you don't need just simply more ounces, right? It would be nice to add in some more high grade ounces or high grade pockets. Can you give us more information then on what the high grade area that you have drilled out more, what that looks like, gram wise, ounce wise? Any insights on that, please?
I think a lot of it's spelled out in the initial resource estimate. As we've talked about, we'll have the updated mineral resource estimate out in the coming month. But I mean, our overall mineral resource estimate, we have over 4 million ounces indicated and an additional 3.3 million ounces inferred. Average grades around 1.45 grams per ton and very top heavy. So in that resource estimate, we broke it out so that you could kind of get a sense of that top heavy nature. So the first 2 million ounces indicated, an additional 0.9 million ounces inferred is within basically the first 42 million tons moved. If you look at the pit, including strip ratios and everything, it's basically 40% of the gold content is carried in the first 14% of material that you would dig out of the ground. So, that's extremely exciting from a mining standpoint and potential, options for bringing this thing forward. So average grade for that starter area across those two categories is about 2.35 grams per ton. So, with effectively, a very low stripping ratio. Obviously, we need to do proper mine design before we can really start talking about what it is specifically. But if you just look at the numbers in the resource estimate, you have about 3 million tons of waste rock in that first 42 million tons of the pit. So that works out to about a 0.08 to 1 stripping, or call it a waste ore ratio. So yeah, it's a pretty exciting start. And, if we were to have drilled dusters this whole season in our step outs, which we didn't, but if we just had that, the total 7.3 million ounce figure, the 4 million indicated and 3.3 million inferred, if we just had that to go with, I think we would be still sitting very pretty and in a very good spot to drive value and push this thing forward.
So, Scott, with the updated resource coming, you are also starting work on the economics, the PEA. What can you tell us in terms of timeline for this, or what work needs to be done to come out with the economics?
Yeah, so it's well underway. We're keen to get through the PEA as fast as we can, but to get a quality product out at the end of the day. And so we've kind of left timing open for the time being in case we need to go back to the field and collect more information. But we have our heads down on that. The consultancy that we brought in to do that work are hard at it. And of course, it's in our best interest to get that out as soon as we can. So no concrete schedule, but we'll update when that changes.
What about some of these other targets then that you have drilled? You said you haven't made another valley-like discovery, but you've drilled a few targets, probably a handful of them. You have other ones in the pipeline. What is the strategy going to be to, continue to advance Valley? That's carrying all the value in the company, but also still take your shots on these other targets.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've almost just outlined the strategy, like continuing to take shots, continuing to use what we've learned about Valley to continue to advance this district. And, we've seen some pretty exciting things in the regional drill data so far and the regional drill results. We've had multiple targets where we see, actually, it's almost ubiquitous that we see visible gold in these drill programs, which is, pretty rare at all. So not just the visible gold, but we're seeing the same fingerprint, the same gold with bismuth and tellurium minerals across a wide range here. And we're even seeing some instances of that porphyritic texture material that I mentioned is, we think, an important driver in the valley system for the high-grade mineralization. And so to see the same fingerprint of mineralization, to see the same ingredients from a geological standpoint more broadly across the district has us pretty excited. So yeah, like I said, it's not always the case that you just find the high-grade pocket sticking right out of the ground, but that gives us a Rosetta Stone that, if we learn to read it very effectively, could help us to vector in on some of these other targets. And in the meantime, just continuing to explore, to drill, to digest, and to get back out there. We have the market cap now that we can do a fairly slow burn, but still aggressive and consistent program to bring this district online. We launched the company with the idea that there's a district out there. Valley was just a single rock chip sample effectively across an outcrop. And in the 4 years since we've launched the company, it's, become the deposit that we've discussed. And, that's a pretty strong proof of concept that the broader geological ideas that got us looking in that place in the first place are valid. And that, yes, this does have very good potential to host a multi-generational minerals district. So we're keen to keep looking. It doesn't cost us too much in the grand scheme of things. And the potential upside is enormous there. And that's a big part of why, we went back to the market just recently for, a relatively small raise, just basically a top up in exploration, like flow through dollars. $20 million puts our treasury up to over $63 million, going into the field season here. So we're in a strong position to execute through this field season. And really that money gives us runway for execution through 2026. So we can keep this regional focus going. You look at other major gold camps in the world and they don't come to fruition overnight. It takes time. It takes this process of going back, iteratively drilling, and eventually you do make the discoveries. So we're pretty keen to get out there and hopefully put something else on the map.
Okay, I'm glad you went there, because I was going to ask now how much money you have. You have a lot of money to go exploring with. When are we going to find out about the program this year? After drilling 35,000 meters last year, what could we be in for in 2025?
Well, it'll be a similar program. All in all, we had 5 drills out there last year. We'll have 5 drills out there again. They're actually overwintered out there and ready to come back online in the middle of May. We'll have details out on the program in the coming weeks as we sort those out ourselves. But we're looking at, continuing to advance Valley. And that goes both from the exploration and sort of upgrading the point of view that we talked about, but also looking at some of the very important work that goes into advancing studies very quickly and effectively. So, we'll be using some of those resources to drill holes that could double as, for geotechnical purposes and that kind of a thing. So really getting the information that we need to advance towards pre-feasibility and feasibility studies. So that'll be a component of that program. And then the regional work will continue. As talked about, we have a lot of exciting targets still in the pipeline. A lot of the ones that we have drilled have just given us a lot more information about how to drill them, how to follow up, and how to vector towards potential sources of mineralization or potential hotspots. So yeah, it should be an exciting year.
All right, Scott, that brings us up to speed. Thank you very much for this update. Again, Scott Berdahl, CEO of Snowline Gold. Click the link in the show notes to visit the Snowline Gold website. Send me any questions you have for Scott, and I'll get him to address those on future calls, especially when we get that updated resource and the plans for this year's drilling. Scott, thank you again for your time today.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey.